Right, welcome. This is Y254 News Discussion. The hashtag is Y254 Updates on Twitter at Y254 channel on Twitter and on Facebook at Y254. My name is Ram Aguko. Tonight it is all about matters development. We are talking about housing and we're asking the question, is Kenya on the right track in ensuring that housing is getting developed? Is Kenya on the right track in ensuring housing development? 22162 is our number. It is on, starting the word Y News. You give us your comments and your feedback concerning the matter. Also at Ram Aguko. The hashtag, remember, Y254 updates. In studio, I'm joined by two guests. One is Karlmax, who is a governance expert, and the one next to me is Areba Omwoyo, who is a lawyer. We shall be joining this discussion together with you as we continue. Now, on to the first issue that, the first questions that I would like to pose to you, if I would start with you, Areba. Is Kenya on the right track when it comes to housing development?
I think there has been a realization that all is not going well, and that is why President Kenyatta has put that as part of his Big Four agenda in his second term. We can only guess that after realization that we all do not have decent housing, most people in Nairobi do not have what we can term as decent and affordable housing, then he decided that part of his legacy is going to be affordable housing. And for the last few days, we have seen a number of efforts that are geared towards a realization of this part of the Big Four agenda. The most recent being the plan to construct 30,000 houses in the next 5 years. But then for me, I'll try to look at the issue from a different perspective. The current plan that we have in terms of housing, what is its audit? We know that we have been having a number of initiatives in slum upgrading the slum areas. How far have we gone with that? Before we jump into trying to launch something else, what was existing in terms of government projects, how far have we gone with it? How far has the government done to ensure that even the private developers, in quotes, are given that opportunity to also put up houses which then can be able to close in the gap from the government? Because we know for sure that the government cannot by itself achieve this target. We then need to have private developers in the real estate sector to come and fill in that gap. Do we have a conducive environment for them? What's the process of trying to buying and selling land and buying and selling houses? So for me, I'll try to look at it that perspective. If then we are not in the right path in terms of providing a humble environment for investment in terms of the real estate sector, then the government initiatives, they can only play too little to come to the issue of housing development in this country.
I also heard you put the word private sector in quotes.
In quotes. I mean, it's because when you use the word private developer in this country, then people tend to give it some kind of negative connotation. But then the private developers, as well known, are those people who are in the private sector. So I think we need to do away with this notion of when somebody says a private developer, then we all think that we are referring to a clique of individuals, one or two individuals that I know you know.
All right. Karlmax, is Kenya on the right track in ensuring housing development?
Thank you, Ram. Consequentialism, in my opinion, is what defines the housing sector in this nation.
Come again. Because it what?
Consequentialism.
Okay, what's that?
Consequentialism.
Yes, that is what, in my opinion, defines the housing sector in this nation. Now, in the recent, months, I think you could see what happened at Ruma. The collapse of the 6-story building now resulted into losses of life and also casualties. Now, if you check on that, that tells you that if we want to define this very well, this gets us back down to the constitution of this country. Now, if you read the chapter 4 of the Kenyan Constitution of the 2010, Article 43, it defines explicitly very well that everyone has a right. It has a right to accessible houses and also affordable houses. And not only that, they need to be reasonably reasonably, with reasonable sanitation. Now, in that order, what do we mean? If you get into now the human rights, it is not only we are talking about the human rights, but you can now define the importance of the word human right in terms of others. That it means that it is everybody, every human being is entitled to those clean and also accessible houses. But then, if you get into now the real sense of what we have, do we really define it that everybody in this country has what we call accessible and also quality houses? That now gets us now to the contrast of the word equality and also the equity. Because if this could have been that we can distribute the entire houses in terms of what it takes, then it does not only now run to the government, it runs back to all of us. And we ask ourselves that for us to define a house, or for us to define where we need actually to be, are they within the conditions that can actually put it clear that before you construct a house in this given country, are there some qualifications? So the questions now comes out and we ask ourselves, then who are responsible? The question is it high time for us as Kenyans to take a collective responsibility over this huge matter? And once that will be at place, now we will be starting to question, because there is one funny thing with the law. And I think he understands what I mean by law. Law, actually, it's what can actually get into protecting and also guiding. But in other words, there is something that the law cannot define. The law cannot define an aspect of human beings in terms of their actions.
Now you.
Wow.
So that is why I'm trying to break it. So once we get to that level, we will ask ourselves, if we give a responsibility to these given agencies, for example, let me use NCA. NCA is the National Construction Authority. What are their mandates? I think they're the one mandated within the given constitution and their act, okay, to issue the certificate of compliance. Before you get into, only within the set requirements. And then we get into now the county government, who does actually give out now the certificate of occupation. And only if that house is actually within the standards and that house has actually also met the requirements. And again, now we get into now the housing, land, housing, and also urban development. Okay, they will issue us again with what we call now, they do now the audit throughout. So when these agencies are not working in line, and nobody can counter-check the other, it's not even possible. By the way, the NCA can mark a house to be demolished, but they don't have the powers to demolish. The county government cannot get into to the houses that are marked without even the court orders. So there is a flow for the smart guys. They actually realize that there is a flow within the law. They are now actually taking advantage over the law to manipulate the I call them the poor citizens.
So you would say in your own opinion that the law has faults, and those faults within the law, those gaps are being utilized by those who are wise enough to notice them.
Precisely. They are smart guys who have known that there are some loopholes within the law. What do? We capitalize on them so that before you realize, you cannot come direct for me.
Areba, would you agree?
I think, first of all, I would like to point out some issues that he has put out on the issue of the constitutional provisions for housing. If I'm not wrong, I think that is part of the cluster of human rights that have what we call progressive realization. You cannot just wake up and provide affordable housing to everybody. But then there is a caveat that comes with such progressive realization rights. The mandated agency, which most of the time is the government, has to show or rather demonstrate clear action in terms of realizing those rights. And again, that is why we need to question ourselves that has the government really shown commitment? Has it put steps to show that it on the right path to have the realization of those rights?
Now, when we are talking about Kenya, the government has a plan to construct 1 million houses at 2.6 trillion Kenyan shillings by 2023. Would you think that is realizable? Because the government has made plans, the government has set objectives, and it is also part of the Big Four agenda. Also, not forgetting the fact that under the Ministry of Transport, Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development, there is a plan to deliver 500,000 homes in 5 years, leave alone the 2023 plan.
I think, Ram, those are very marvelous plans on your computer or on paper in somewhere in a government office. When you really go to the ground and try to look at whether these actions are feasible, are these actions do they make sense? In my opinion, is that we need to be realistic when we put actions. I will use an example which might not be relevant to this. We had a discussion a few weeks ago about the Nairobi Regeneration Program. They really set very ambitious timelines, which then none of them were met. So that tells us that we most of the time we run and try to set targets. We sit in a lot of retreats and come up with plans. But then, are those plans, do they make sense? Are they feasible? In my thinking is that this is a very ambitious plan, which we have rushed into without clearly considering all the factors. Number one, we need to look at the land acquisition. We don't have that land ready to develop that. Number two, this, in my opinion, or rather in my understanding, this is going to be a public-private partnership. It's not going to entirely be a government project. Have then we identified those developers? Have we done, if we are going to acquire land from private entities, have we developed a compensation scheme? Or this is another cash cow? Maybe because look at even Mombasa County, they have a very ambitious plan in terms of housing. How far is that ambitious plan? It remains to be ambitious. So for me, that we have a lot on paper, we have less on the ground.
Right. Coming back to you, in terms of governance, housing principal secretary Charles Mwaura worked and lived in South Africa for nearly 20 years before he was plucked from his private sector job and given the senior public service job earlier this year. Would you say that it is wise? Even we have also had cases of Miguna having to compare Kenya with other countries. Is it a thing that is wise for us to compare Kenya with other countries, or should Kenya be developed in its own mindset? In terms of governance, is it also good for Kenya to develop itself with regards to other countries' development sector in terms of housing?
In terms of simple definition of how to develop a country. Now, the good governance starts with education. You educate, then from that time you hire. Immediately you hire, you can export. But in Kenya, we do the reverse. The reverse in terms of we educate, then we don't actually hire, then at the same time we now import. So the reason being that even all the given sectors, starting from
Starting from,
let's start from, let me use this example of the doctors. Do you know we have the doctors in this country? We educate them, we don't hire them, and then we import doctors for them. The same thing happens with the housing. We have the constitution that defines very well what we mean by the housing,
right,
and what we mean by accommodation.
Right.
But in that essence, do we really do what is expected of us? No. We are making a country, because when we were doing some research some years back, what happened, we were actually told that, a country, Kenya, the title that we were using during the research is that they love the cities. But do you know what? Kenyans actually don't love their cities. What Kenyans love, what people don't understand is that they don't love the city. It is that the resources, the so-called resources, in terms of opportunities, and also the social amenities, these are the things that we are calling in plenty, that is in quote, within a city. But with the devolution, these things have been actually being distributed back there. Why don't we use the housing department as a sector to get back now to decongest cities? In terms of, if we want to do this project that I'm getting to here, how have we discussed this with the county government? Have we now actually embraced that there is a clear coordination between the county government and the national government? So that when there is something like that is going to take place, then we can get to understand that it is going to accommodate a number of given population that is not supposed to be transferred from the rural to urban. And are they going to be affordable? Because that is the question. You cannot take a house that is worth, a suburb somewhere, or maybe let me say a bungalow somewhere, you go and construct it in Marsabit. Nobody will stay there.
Maybe there'll be one or two people that will stay there.
Yes. So then we don't actually make it to be.
But there are two.
Yes.
One or two.
Now, I want to go back to the issue of PS you talked about. I think being a leader in this country, there's some kind of software degradation. I'm not going to use upgradation that we normally put it into ourselves. There are one or two exceptions. In that, when we even pluck some people from the private sector and plant them into the country, they still get immersed in our way of doing things, and we rarely see people trying to do things differently. I say this with a lot of respect to a number of leaders.